or your Zoom screen, you'll be able to chat questions. I know I have a lot of thoughts on the film. Love to hear your thoughts, your questions, and Rabbi Bruk is here to answer them. So before we get started with exciting questions, first let's welcome all of the communities that joined together to watch this evening. We'll start with, of course, Rabbi Levin and the Chabad of the Greater South Bay, and Rabbi Zalmi Levin and Chabad of Palo Alto, and Chabad of Lake Tahoe, Rabbi Morty Richler, Chabad of El Cerrito, Rabbi Yankee Bell, Chabad of Downtown San Jose, Rabbi Shaya Bernstein, Chabad of Emeryville with Rabbi Mendy Blank, Chabad by the Sea, Rabbi Yochanan Friedman, Chabad Center for Jewish Life in Santa Cruz, Rabbi Menachem Gazinski, the Richmond Torah Center in San Francisco with Rabbi Aaron Hecht, the Chabad of Roseville, Rabbi Yossi Karek, Chabad of Midpen, Rabbi Levi Potash, Chabad of Danville and San Ramon, Rabbi Shmuley Reitman, Chabad of the North Peninsula, Rabbi Yael Spalter, Chabad of Solano County, Rabbi Chaim Zaklas, Chabad of Sonoma County, Rabbi Mendel Vovsky, Chabad of Petaluma, Rabbi David Bush, and Chabad of Folsom, Rabbi Yossi Grossman. And I'll help moderate the question, Rabbi Menachem Landa from Chabad of Novato. So thank you for joining us. Rabbi Bruk, a lot of thoughts watching this film. Very well done. I'd like to hear the background. Was it you that had the idea of starting this film? Was it the producers, the filmmakers that asked you, that knew you? Where did this film come from? How did it begin?
No, the filmmakers did not know me, nor was it my idea. Baruch Hashem, with God's amazing grace, I have a very busy life, and to have filmmakers following you around for 3 years, following you, take your kids to school in the morning, and as you can tell, very addicted to videoing you take out the garbage every few minutes. They have another shot of me rolling out the garbage. You'd think I'm a full-time garbage collector. And
Rabbi Bruk, I saw you do it with the kapata. I saw you take out the garbage with your full black coat on. Is that traditional in Montana?
Last rolling out before the holiday or Shabbos starts. But to answer your question, I got a random call one day at the Chabad house, as many Chabad houses get random calls all the time, and they said, we love your mezuzah campaign, we'd like to make a movie. So I'm a native New Yorker, I don't have time for small talk. I said, so come make a movie. So they weren't expecting that. They wanted to have a long, dragged out. So they tried, and I said, listen, tell me when you're coming, I'll be ready for your arrival, let's move on. And that's what happened. They showed up once, and they thought it'll be maybe a short, I think they call it a short documentary, which is maybe 20 minutes. And once they saw what was going on with Jewish life in Montana, they felt that it could expand, and it ended up being what it is. So I'm assuming if anyone's on this call, they've watched it. It all started from a innocent phone call that two producers, directors, Amy Geller and Jerry Perry, made from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to a random Chabad rabbi who they read about online because they were researching mezuzahs, and they found an article about mezuzahs in Montana, and the rest is history. All
right. I want to know what were your thoughts when you watched the film? I don't know if you were involved in the making of it, or you just got to watch it at the end of it. Let me rephrase it. What bothered you about this film?
Bothered me? Very few things bother me, and certainly on the list of things that bother me are not this film. I was the subject of the film, which is an interesting place to be. I was very happy with the results. Of course, I saw various variations of the film along the way. Not that I had an opportunity to make any changes, but they did show me where things were at because it went in different directions at different times. You can see during the film, the whole story happened with the neo-Nazis and Whitefish, and that was in addition to the film. Also, our family grew a couple times along the way, and that had to shift things in their film. I was very happy with the end result. They had promised me when they came out that they would be fair journalists, which is something that anyone in today's day and age, especially Chabad rabbis who are used to being portrayed as caricatures in any form of media, are very, very cautious with. I think they were blown away by the fact that we basically opened up our homes and our home and our family to them without very few restrictions. And I think they did a good job of being fair. I think what you saw in that film was a very accurate portrayal. I mean, of course, there's little details, but for the most part, a very accurate portrayal, not only of Jewish life in Montana, but Jewish life around the country. You have people that are unhappy with Chabad's activities. And that's just part of life. and we need to learn to live with that, and they're not always going to dance because we made a good program. And as long as you don't take it personally, then it's not an issue with you, right? Every one of those other rabbis in the film, they said themselves, they have nothing against Chaim. And I believe them, they don't. They have nothing against me, nor against Chavi. It's an issue with the representation of Judaism that we share with Montana. And that's fair game. We have to face that. It's fair game to be unhappy with Chabad. You may lose this battle, but it's okay to be unhappy.
Okay, so thank you, Chaim. I'm getting feedback in both directions. I'm getting a text right now from someone in our community that watched it. Amazing, heartwarming, inspirational, ... Loved it. Other ones is, I was ruffled. That's not the Chabad I know. Just from
probably
here.
A reason that I'm living in Montana and you guys are in California. California, you guys have to do things in a California way, and the Rebbe in his incredible genius made sure that, tried at least to the best of his ability to put the right rabbis in the right community. Montanans are not, they don't like fluff. Bozemanites like the real deal. They want you to tell them what, and by the way, you saw that in the film as well. You saw, some of the most progressive members of our congregation saying that what they love about Chabad is that they're getting Judaism hardcore, unadulterated. If they like it, they take it. If not, they leave it. But the idea that the rabbi or the rebbitzin should give them half-baked Judaism just because it's going to make them feel good that day, that's not what we do. At least that's not what we do in Montana. So I get it, by the way. I'm not in denial. If I was a long-standing, devoted member of Reform Judaism, and you watch a film that portrays the Chabad rabbi as some crusader that's out to get the whole world, I would also be a little ruffled. The part that they didn't portray, and I said this on a few of the other Q&As about the film, is that Rabbi Ed has been to my house countless times. We sat in my living room. He's actually just ran for office and got elected as the nominee for the Democrat Party here in Bozeman. So he's not a practicing rabbi. I mean, he's not a rabbi of a congregation anymore. He's now in the realm of politics. He came to, with a little humor, but he came to ask me for a donation for his campaign. He sat in my living room. We have a very cordial relationship. But when it comes to the issues that we care about, of course, we're going to see the world very differently. Rabbi Ed, let's face it, Rabbi Ed gets on the radio and talks about Israel in ways that most Jews, and I'm talking about even progressive Jews, would feel very uncomfortable with. And I'm not going to sit by quietly and say, oh, that's cool, I'm just cool with that. I'm not. And so we can sugarcoat the realities of today's world all we want, or we can turn it into some fight that it isn't. It isn't a fight. It's just two ways of seeing the world, and we can get along, we can grab coffee and have a l'chaim together. But when it comes to ideological religious issues, we have to call a spade a spade. Otherwise, we're fooling the people that we're talking to. And that's not, at least in Bozeman and Montana, people like real. They don't like fluff. So you can give real, you can give it with love, but you got to call a spade a spade.
Thank you. Anyone who would like could chat their question. You could put it in. I'll be happy to address those two.
I want to make a special welcome while I'm at it to Blair and Lisa. I believe they're in San Mateo, but somehow they're on this call, and their son Brandon lives in Bozeman, a dear friend of mine, and it was a pleasure to see them on the call. So a shout out to my Bozeman connection, the whole Northern California. I finally found one that I can see.
You made it out to Montana before you moved there with your wife Chavi, several times.
I was here for the summer of 2004, the summer of 2005. I was here for the Hanukkah of 2005, and I sent matzah to the Jewish community for Passover of 2005. So I spent about 2.5 years investing my time in the Jewish community of Montana, which resulted in me coming out with Chavi about 6 months after our wedding. Of course, if you bring a Texas girl to Montana, you should preferably do that in July, which is what I did. I would take a girl from San Antonio to Montana in February. I'm not sure what the end result would have been. But we did what we did, and the morning after our first wedding anniversary, we got married on the 22nd day of the month of Adar in 2006, and the 23rd day of Adar in the year 2007, we landed in beautiful Bozeman, Montana, and we never looked back.
Wow, beautiful.
Did the rabbi ever have a personal conversation with any of those white supremacists? The particular ones from the Whitefish case, I did not have a conversation with, but during that era, we had 2 former white supremacists reach out to us to share their support for the Jewish community and to let us know that having been in that world at one point in their life, they want us to know that they're not there anymore and that they really stand in solidarity with the Jewish community. Remember, I know Montana's portrayed as some place of, the KKK and the Unabomber and the white supremacists. It's not the reality. And reality is 99% of Montana, 99.9% of Montana are mostly libertarian-minded, meaning they don't care if you're Hasidic, they don't care if you're black, they don't care what you are, you're welcome as long as you don't come on their property without permission, then you get shot. But otherwise, they really don't mind. They live and let live, and that's been our experience from day one. And so with all the caricatures out there about what Montana looks like, they're really, really fear-minded people, and I'm walking proof of that. Occasionally you have a nudnik that really, is mostly ignorant, not really anti-Semitic, and through education you get through to them. You don't change anti-Semites' minds by barking at them. You change anti-Semites' minds by catching them on the corner and say, yeah, I'm a Jew, what can I do for you? And you can do that in Montana because, again, the chance of them doing anything harmful to you is very slim because, again, everyone's armed here, so they're not the unique ones that are armed. Everyone's armed, so they think twice about doing anything silly. And I think that if we learn to educate people, we'll be doing ourselves a service instead of turning everyone that's ignorant into an anti-Semite, because that doesn't gain us anything. But I see I'm missing questions here that are coming in on the chat. So
that's okay. Well, yeah, we'll get through them. Also, the office, whoever's helping with the videos, it says some of the videos have stopped by the host. Is that a technical glitch, or is that something that videos can be put back on? Let's take, I guess, I'm just going to read your question, Rabbi Chaim. I guess that I was quite disturbed by the rabbi who questioned the existence of the patriarchs. I guess at the end of the conversation then and there, I have to ask, what is the credibility of such a rabbi?
So that's my point. I mean, that's my point. And I just for the record, there's only one scene in that film that was staged. And what I mean by staged is that every other part of the film was simply a crew, a video crew following us around, asking us questions. And myself, Javi, the kids, we were living our lives. That was the only part of the film, those 3 minutes with Rabbi Ed, where they said, Rabbi Chaim, could you and Rabbi Ed have a debate? And I was like, no, not really interested. We're not going to get anywhere. Please, please. They begged, they coerced. Eventually, we both agreed to do it. I did not go in there happily. If you couldn't tell from the film, I was not happy to be there because I knew it wouldn't get anywhere. And I was right about that. But I thought it was important that if we're going to have the conversation, people need to know. Rabbi Ed has told me more than once, and he's not the only one he's the only one that is vocal about it, that he's not sure that the Exodus from Egypt ever happened. Which I always tell him, if the Exodus from Egypt didn't happen, that means you don't believe in the 10 Commandments either, because the first of the 10 Commandments says, I am God, your Lord, who took you out of Egypt. So we have to have this conversation. It's an important conversation. And I think it is an important thing for people to know that there could be someone that carries the title rabbi that may not be sure that Abraham and Shakespeare are any different than each other. And to us as Jews who are faithful and traditional, and when I say us, I mean Chabad rabbis, Rebbitzins, who are brought up and raised in the incredible depth and the juicy Judaism that we love, the idea that Abraham is somehow maybe he did live, maybe he didn't live, Exodus, maybe it's the foundation of it all. There's a reason they're called patriarchs, founding fathers of Judaism, founding mothers of Judaism. And so I wanted that to become clear that there is a crystal difference between what we both offer. And so there are different forms of Judaism. No one's questioning that. It's America. It's 2020. There are flavors of Judaism that are growing in numbers every day. But to say that it's all equal isn't true. We represent and we offer. And that's why I don't consider it competition, by the way. I've never considered any other denomination here in Montana as competition. I think it's a mistake when rabbis of different denominations consider each other competition. You can only be competition if you're selling the same product. But if you're selling a totally different version of Judaism, then people get to choose. What is it they're looking for?
Thank you. So I'm going to read Jolie's question. I think it's a good one if you can address. I was surprised, it's one of the first questions that came in. I was surprised by the separation of the Jewish leaders. Have you found a better way to communicate with one another and to come to some kind of acceptance or understanding that we are all Jews and it is better to build than to divide? It's a great question. Thank you, Jolie.
It's a great question, but I will say there was a lot of cliches in that question. Because again, Rabbi Ed, Rabbi Francine, Rabbi Laurie, who you don't see in the film, the student rabbi in Billings, Rabbi Alan Setzer, who you do see in the film, who I'm sitting and chatting with because we're old friends. We know each other for about 15 years now. We all get along. But the question is, what does it mean get along? We don't go to the same parties simply because I don't go to parties other than the ones that I host. And so I host parties all the time, celebrations, Yom Tov, Shabbos, classes. It's a busy life to be a Chabad rabbi, especially if you have a wife and 5 children that you're trying to care for simultaneously. So we don't run around to social scenes. We don't hang out at political events. So do we get along? Absolutely we get along. And by the way, if you asked each one of them, Francine might be the only one that may not think the same way, but she's very new to Montana, and she doesn't live in Bozeman where I live with Rabbi Ed, and Alan used to live here. We get along fantastically. I've been to Ed's house, he's been to mine. But what does it mean to get along? To stand as a united front? And on what issue? The only time thus far that we've stood up together as a union of rabbis has been either for anti-Semitic events, which is very, very rare. We do a menorah lighting together at the state capitol every year. All the rabbis attend and we all speak united. We don't say the same things, not even close, but we all come together to celebrate Hanukkah at the state capitol. And there was once an event back, I think it was 2008 or 9, where the Jews for Jesus were making a little bit of noise, all 7 of them. And so the other rabbis asked me if I would sign on to a letter against the Jews for Jesus. And I read the letter, I made a few tweaks, and we all signed a letter to the editor. Generally, we've tried doing programs together. There's not a will. I think there's a fear of some sort. But again, there's so many Jews to deal with. I don't know that there has to be that operation. Everyone does their thing. There's plenty of Jews to go around, and let's just all get along. Happy-go-lucky. Doesn't mean we have to do programs together. We just have to behave to each other, and I think we're doing a good job at that.
All right, thank you. Next question I'll ask you is from Gail. I guess you coined it as half-baked Judaism. So Gail asks, wow, half-baked Judaism. I get fully baked Judaism from my and my spouse's rabbis. We belong to 2 synagogues who happen to be women. Your ideas about not listening to women singing, teaching Torah, to both men and women, etc., as far as I know, are not in Torah, but simply Hasidic and Orthodox tradition.
Okay, so I need to preface something. The talk tonight, this Q&A, is not going to address issues associated between the divide between Orthodox and non-Orthodox versions of Judaism, because it's way beyond tonight's Q&A about the film to discuss how traditional Judaism sees Judaism versus other forms of Judaism sees it. So you write about teaching Torah to both men and women, which I do. You teach about women singing, which you have no problem with, as long as the recipients of the singing are only women as well. It is Torah. There's no such thing as Hasidic and Orthodox Judaism. It's either Judaism or not. I don't want to take back, but that term half-baked Judaism, I'm not even sure. You have to remember, it's 10:30 at night here in Montana. It's way past my bedtime. So if I use the term half-baked Judaism, was it on the film or on the Q&A? I'm not even sure. But either way, my point is that the rabbis themselves, at least the ones that I interact with here in Bozeman, and I'm not talking about the 2 wonderful women rabbis that Gail is referring to, because I don't know them, so I'm going to assume they're fantastic. But here in Bozeman, it's not like I have to make it up. They say it themselves, that they don't believe in this part of the Torah, that part of the Torah, this verse is not theirs, that verse is not theirs. So when I say half-baked, I mean maybe half-deleted, if that's a better term for you. But the bottom line is, they themselves proclaim loudly that certain parts of Judaism are not relevant today. And we believe that every facet of Judaism, every beautiful part of the esoteric and exoteric, the halachic, the Jewish law, and the mysticism, all of it is part of the beauty of Torah. And Chavi, for example, my wife gives a meditation class every Sunday morning, the class in meditation for women. And now with Zoom, 9-10 women every Sunday morning, they're studying Torah, they're studying Jewish mysticism, and none of the women on the Zoom, as far as I know, trying to think, none of them, I don't believe, are from an Orthodox background, but they want to experience traditional Judaism. So my term half-baked simply meant self-identified, non-observant of many, many of the Jewish laws.
All right. Before we continue with some of the questions, can you, Chaim, just share one of your inspiring shlichut stories of your being there, anyone specific that you were there for them in a very difficult time, or?
Yeah, there's a couple from Cleveland, outside of Cleveland, Chagrin Falls, I believe it's called, Ohio. And I got a call on Chol Hamoed Pesach, the second day of Chol Hamoed, the intermediate days of Pesach, a couple of years ago, from a Chabad rabbi in Cleveland. He said there's a Jewish girl, 32 years old, a Jewish woman that was killed in a car crash on the second day of Pesach, and the body is at Dal Funeral Home. And I said, Dal Funeral Home? It's literally 35 seconds by car from my house, not even a minute away. So I immediately went to the funeral home. Unfortunately, the body was in bad shape from a very bad accident, but I arranged with the family to have the body transported back to Ohio during Pesach. And I stayed with the body as many hours as I could, saying Psalms. And then I was the only one doing the Levaya, the funeral here in Bozeman. I literally, in my own car, in a pouring rain, thunderstorm, followed the car to the airport and led the coffin onto the plane and sent the body back. Carrie Friedman was her name. And I have a wonderful relationship with her parents. I didn't meet them till almost 6 months later. I never knew them before, but there was a Jewish woman who lived in Bozeman who passed away under tragic circumstances. And the idea that today I have such a deep bond with her parents and her sister Ilana is a result of being there for Jews. And they're not Orthodox. They're maybe Reform. I'm not sure what title they go with. But they're very, very dear friends of both me and Chavi, brought together through tragedy, but tragedy that we were able to be there for them in their time of need. And there's hundreds of stories, whether it's on the positive side of beautiful Jewish baby boys that had brisses and circumcisions on the 8th day by flying in moils, and sadly on the other side of the life spectrum. But that's what we do. We don't ask people, excuse me, sir, are you a member of my synagogue? Did you pay your dues yet? Excuse me, what's your title? Are you Reform, Orthodox, Super Duper Orthodox, Ultra Reform? Are you Renewal, Conservative, Humanist, Unaffiliated, Atheist? I couldn't care less. You're a brother and sister. You're a member of the human race that needs some love. That's what we're here for. And that's something that the Rebbe ingrained in us, and that will never go away. The love for every human being without any strings attached.
Beautiful. I'll ask a question from Tara. We lived in Iowa for 14 years, a state similar to Montana in the sense of few Jews in a largely rural state. Other Jews and Jewish congregations and rabbis have had different reactions to Chabad, good or bad, depending on the Chabad rabbi. There are several Chabad rabbis in various cities. Do you think your personality and behaviors affect for better or worse beyond just being Hasidic?
I think everyone's personality affects everything. I mean, the idea that anyone's a carbon copy of each other, and we have if you teach me a certain book, I'll be a certain way. No, Rebbe wanted each of us to be who we are, to live our personalities as long as it's within the realms of Jewish law and the Hasidic values. And so, of course, my personality is part of that experience. So is Chavi's. She's a Texas girl. She's a firebrand from San Antonio. And so between the two of us, a New Yorker and a Texan, sure, our bulldozing type of philosophy of just here we come very much affects the way the response is. But ask yourself a question. There's 4,000 Jews in Montana, 4,000 households that have a Jew. If you take all the Jews that are members at every synagogue, Chabad, and all the Reform congregations around the state, you maybe have 450 members, paying members to synagogues, which means there's 3,550 Jewish households in Montana, households that have a Jew that are not affiliated with a synagogue of any kind. So my job is not about, to quote the film, poaching members from another synagogue. There's 3,550 Jews in Montana that no one's caring for because they live 8 hours away by car. Or they live in a town that has 200 people and there's only one Jew. That's what we do. We make sure every single one of our brothers and sisters feels part of the Jewish family, whether they ever come to shul or not. It's not about showing up in shul. Of course, I'd like a few more people in shul. Maybe if you guys have a few more months of lockdown in California, a few more Californians will move to Bozeman. There's a reason why they call Bozeman Los Angeles, for a good reason, because so many Californians come here. And maybe more of you will come, but it's not about the numbers. It's not about quantity. If I wanted quantity, I could live in a nice, comfortable shul, get a pulpit job, and have 300 people in the pews. That's not what it's about. It's about quality. It's about showing up at someone's door the night before Pesach and hand delivering 3 handmade shmura matzahs so that wherever they're going to have a seder, right? Think about it. Even if they're going to be eating in a treif restaurant on the night of Pesach, when they come home, a little bit tipsy from the vodka they drank, or they take out their box and say, tonight's Passover. let me have my matzah because God said so and the rabbi was kind enough to bring it by. And that's what it's about. So all these conversations about this rabbi said this and the tit for tat and the Federation said this and the UJA said this and Hillel said this and Hadassah said that and the Jewish Family Services, we don't have that in Montana. There's no Federation, there's no Hillel, there's no Jewish Family Services. There's a couple of beautiful Reform congregations. There's 3 Chabad houses. We opened 2 additional Chabad houses that you saw in the film. And there's many more Chabad houses to come. We can't rest. We can't rest. We're losing Jews every day to assimilation. So how could we sit back and twiddle our thumbs about this theoretical concept and that theoretical? And we don't have time. We have to save the neshamas. We have to make sure that every Jewish soul doesn't get lost to Buddhism and to Christianity and to other, religions that are out there. We have to save them and keep them in our fold.
Beautiful. Changing topics here. One of the most inspiring parts for me was seeing you play with your son, Meni, right? Is that a name?
Yeah, that's his name.
What's it like raising a child, a black child, adopting a black child and raising him in Montana? Has he experienced racism? Have you received any comments, your family?
Yes, we've received many, many beautiful comments. It's wonderful to raise a black child in Montana. The school system, the community is an incredibly welcoming place for everybody. And how is it to raise many? As it is to raise any child. This whole idea of it being different. Of course, we discuss the issues of race with many. There's many deep conversations, as deep as you can have with a 7-year-old about what life is for black people in this country and around the world and what that means long term. And Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks are conversations that are not theoretical, they're very practical. But the idea that there is no difference when you're a father of a black child or a mother of a black child or a Hispanic child or any type of minority child, it's the same. You treat them with the same love that you treat every one of your children, and they get it, they feel it. And the community's been wonderful. The Chabad community around the world has been incredibly warm and welcoming, despite all the negative press that we get for being some insular or whatever. The reality is that the welcoming that many got from the Orthodox community and the Chabad community, as he is, at the time before his 3rd birthday, when his hair was cut, a Jewish black boy with dreadlocks and a yarmulke that can't stay on his head because of the dreadlocks, he was welcomed with warmth and love, undisputed. And so we consider ourselves very blessed, and we know that he's going to have, like every child, every adopted child, especially as a black child, he's going to have his own challenges along the way, and we'll deal with it accordingly. But as of today, we are the ones challenged by him. He's not challenged by us. He's a very, as you can tell, I don't know if you could tell in the film, he's on the wild side of things. And let's just say that, thank God, right now at 10:30, he's in a deep sleep, and I'm very grateful.
How much interaction, Rabbi Chaim, do you have with the non-Jewish community? I see you have a radio program, but do you have anything else?
I was interviewed on the radio. I'm interviewed every day. By the way, if you want to be interviewed on the radio, any one of you wants to be interviewed on the radio in Montana, just come here. It's not a big deal. We have daily, hourly interaction with the non-Jewish community. We have an incredible relationship with, I would say, the entire Bozeman.
What's the purpose of it? What's your, is it for the intention of proselytizing or just informing on news?
No, they're my friends. My friends are both Jewish and Gentile throughout the community. There's no purpose. The purpose is to be their friend, like every other human being. I run into a guy in the store, we become friends, and then we hang out for coffee. They come to my house for dinner. And so we have many, many non-Jewish friends, very dear friends, very respectful to our traditions. So they know, where it's a good place for them to be, and they're not going to come to Ne'ilah service on Yom Kippur because they know it doesn't do so well. But as friends, at Meni's Upsherish, when Meni turned 3, there was 180 people at the Upsherish. Probably 80 of them were Gentiles from the community who are friends with our family, who wanted to be there for the experience. Friends through school, friends through our work in the community. Again, to debunk the myths. I mean, it's not a thing that I do to reach out to Gentiles. It's just they're my friends.
Thank you. And if people that have been tuning on more recently, you're welcome to either chat in questions. You could also chat them to me privately if you prefer. Sarah wants to know, did you open up Chabad in Whitefish or Kalispell? I think Sarah has family that originates from those cities, so she wants to know.
So the actual physical location is in Kalispell. It made more sense. There were way more Jews in Kalispell and Big Fork. If she knows the area, she knows what I'm talking about. There were way more Jews in Kalispell, but also Kalispell is central for Lakeside and Big Fork and Columbia Falls, Evergreen, whitefish, and even eureka. So Kalispell made more sense, and they're actually doing incredibly well. It's actually Chavi's sister. I don't know if you caught that at the end of the film. Chavi's sister, Hanala, and her husband, Schneier, opened up a year and a half ago, and they're just rocking it. So Baruch Hashem, we can't wait to open the next one. Any of you looking for a gig? If you want out of California, just send me a message.
Okay, here's a question that came in privately. I think it's more of a technical question. Did your children have to adopt when you adopted your children? Did they have to convert to Judaism?
Some of them did, some of them didn't. Which ones are which is none of your business. That's something between me and my children, and it's something between us as a family. And we were open about it with them. Our kids, there's nothing about our kids' experiences, including the fact that they're adopted and where they're from, et cetera, that they don't know. We share everything with them at the right moment. But yes, we're open to both. The Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory was open to both types of adoption. I want to address a question that came in privately. Said, why did I say adoption was taboo? Is because historically in the Orthodox Jewish world, it was taboo. Remember in the 50s and 60s, even in the general community, just in the general secular community, the idea of not telling a child that they were adopted was very common. You would adopt a kid and never tell them. Then when they turned older, they'd find out and all hell would break loose. So it wasn't unique to the Orthodox community, but the Orthodox community being part of that whole culture. Also, when a kid was adopted, there were some kids adopted, but it wasn't a public thing. And when we adopted, we realized there's so many couples struggling with infertility. We can't just keep it quiet and then expect to help others live through their challenges and find another option. And so we went public and changed the trajectory. And today, thank God, there's many other couples that have adopted, and we hope many more will. But it definitely was a very uncommon thing to talk about in public and to make an open story for the world to know back in 2009 when we adopted Chaya, our first baby in our family.
Beautiful. This question is from Howard. Is there a Chabad in South Dakota, the state with the smallest Jewish population, only 200 people? Could you also just address a more broader question? Do you have a relationship with a Chabad in the states nearby? And what is that relationship like?
Absolutely. So we have a little unit. It's like a little gang. We call ourselves Chabad. We don't call it Chabad of the Mountain West. It includes Utah, Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. So in Idaho today, there's one Chabad house in Boise. Utah has today 4 Chabad rabbis, 2 in Salt Lake City, including Rabbi Levin's son-in-law, Rabbi Avremi, and then 1 in Park City and 1 in St. George. Wyoming has 1 in Jackson Hole. Montana, as I mentioned earlier, has 3 Chabad houses. In Bozeman is ours. In Missoula, Rabbi Chesky and Rachi Vogel, and up in the flat at Hanel and Schneier Wolf. So we have a great relationship with all our neighbors. Even in Saskatchewan and Canada, we have a good relationship with the shluchim, with the rabbis there. But to answer the question about South Dakota definitely has way more than 200 Jews. Don't believe what you see on the Jewish census. It says also that Montana has 800 Jews, which was the last time they checked was probably 1957. So the 200 Jews of South Dakota, there are way more. And yes, there's a Chabad in Sioux Falls, Rabbi Mendel Alperovich and his wife, wonderful couple. They moved there about, I would say, 3 or 4 years ago. And they are rocking it. And Fargo, North Dakota has one as well with Rabbi Yonah Grossman and his wife. And they're sort of like adopted to the Mountain West region. They're not full members. They haven't got full members. Like in the EU, you have partial membership. Eventually, we're going to let South Dakota and North Dakota into our pact of the region.
Thank you. Here's a question that came in from Gary and Devorah to me. Okay. How do your kids who go to public school form lasting social connections with others who have such a different lifestyle and set of beliefs? Do they even invest in, if they move out at the age of bar and bat mitzvah, do they lose those connections?
So I can't answer that question because my oldest child who has gone through that system is only 10 and a half. And so she hasn't left that system yet, so I don't know how to answer it. Our daughter Shoshana was adopted at the age of 12. And so she did go to middle school and she did retain 1 or 2 good friends from that experience. And now, even though she's not there anymore, she's still in touch with one of them in particular very closely. I don't think it's a problem to have a friendship, even a deep friendship with someone who has a very, very different view of life. If you're comfortable in your skin and you have a foundation that's rock solid, I'm not scared to be friends with anybody. If they're trying to proselytize me, of course I would be bothered. But if they're just friends, true friends, what's the worry? Unless you're not sure about your own foundation, and then we got bigger issues to worry about, and that's not about who your friends are, it's about who you are.
Right. From Gail, are you planning to open up an elementary school soon?
No, I'm not. I can't even get a preschool together. I can't even get a mommy and me. So no, the answer is no. I'm not planning on opening an elementary school. And even if you gave me $1 million, I would not open elementary school because we'd be broke in 2 years.
From Lori, I felt sad listening to the animosity between all three rabbis. Without agreeing with the position the other takes, couldn't you all three try to be more respectful and try harder to understand where the other is coming from?
I think I answered Lori's question a few times already. Like I said, the film was out to make a point, and I can't, they're filmmakers, they did their job, and I would say they did it well. But if we're going to give an accurate portrayal of how life is in the Jewish world, and by the way, this has nothing to do with Montana. Let me tell you, if you made a film about Judaism, I don't know, let's just say in the Bay Area, and you went and interviewed rabbis about different viewpoints, especially, so now take that and move it into a smaller community where there's so many more few Jews to so-called to choose from, right? And let's state the fact, and that is Chabad moved to Montana permanently in 2007 when we opened up. But Chabad was visiting Montana since 1956. Rabbinical students were coming here since 1956. Many of the Jews that were attending Reform congregations in Bozeman and Missoula, in Great Falls, there was a camp in Israel, Chabad summer camp for 2 summers in Great Falls, Montana. My father-in-law was one of the counselors in 1979, 1980. So Chabad wasn't foreign to Montana. So when Chabad finally came here permanently, a lot of those people who were always, fond of Chabad and adored Chabad and liked more traditional Judaism naturally shifted away from, for example, in Bozeman, from Congregation Beth Shalom and came to Chabad, because they felt that was where they were more comfortable with. So of course there was a membership loss. So I can't blame the rabbis for being, unhappy with that. But then again, if you truly believe in, like I told Rabbi Alan Setzer on the film, if you believe in capitalism, shouldn't that apply to a person's Jewish experience? That if Jews are happier in their Jewish experience in one place over another, shouldn't you allow them to experience that without, I'll give you an example. Today's, is it really Sunday? Wow. So on Thursday, a young couple living here in Bozeman, the husband isn't Jewish, the wife is Jewish, and they just had a baby girl about a month ago. They were on a hike, and they met an elderly Jewish couple, and they were chatting, and the elderly Jewish couple tells her, you really should come to the Congregation Beth Shalom. She says, I'm very happy at Chabad. She goes, so they say to her, your husband isn't Jewish. So she goes, of course I know my husband isn't Jewish. What do you mean? He said, well, you know what Chabad thinks about non-Jews. So she says, excuse me, my husband's hanging out with Chabad for 2 years. He loves hanging out with the rabbi. So they say, but the prayers are in Hebrew. She goes, yeah, of course I know. I've been going there for 4.5 years myself. Of course I know the prayers are in Hebrew. What's your point? He goes, they were trying, talk about poaching. They were literally begging this lady to convince her that Chabad is horrible for her. And here is a progressive woman with a progressive husband and a newborn baby she grew up in Chicago, lived in New York. She is the epitome. If you looked at her social media posts, you would know she's the epitome of a progressive Jewish woman. And yet she didn't understand why anyone would stand in her way of experiencing something so wonderful that she's experiencing Chabad. And Chabad offers something that's very special, which is pure joy, pure Judaism, and you come and take it as you wish. And that's something that's unbeatable. It's a recipe that's unbeatable because it's something ingrained in our DNA from the Rebbe. I should shy away from that. I can't. It's who we are. I wish more people would be like that. I mean, outside, the Rebbe's dream was that everyone should be like that. I wish every other rabbi and Rebbitzin, male rabbis, female, I wish they would all treat their fellow Jews, including ultra super duper Orthodox Jews, with the same love and the same non-judgmentalism that we treat atheist, assimilated, non-affiliated Reform Jews. I wish there was equality when it came to rabbis treating other rabbis.
Thank you. Can we zone in on the mezuzah campaign?
Sure.
How did it get started? How did you identify which houses to put up a mezuzah? And what percentage of homes would you say already have a mezuzah? And also, how far would you drive to put up a mezuzah across Montana? It's a pretty big state, 14 times the size of Israel.
The answer to the last question, how far, there's no limit. I mean, you can drive in Montana the same distance that it takes to drive from New York to Chicago, just to give you some idea of the magnitude of it. It's similar to California. You guys are number 3 in how large the state is, and we're number 4. I would drive anywhere. I mean, obviously, I would arrange the visit in a way that I can be on that side of the state, but there's no limit to how far we drive for mezuzah or anything else. How to identify? It's very simple. If there's a Jew living in the home, there's going to be a mezuzah up there, unless they adamantly don't want one. But like I said, most people, doesn't matter what their background is, when they were offered a kosher mezuzah on their front door, they were happy to put it there, and they felt it as a true blessing for their home as it is. Right now, we've put up a little over 460 mezuzahs on homes that previously did not have a kosher mezuzah on the door. What's interesting is that because of COVID, I was going around to give out matzah, so I hand-delivered personally matzah to 250 homes before Pesach, in the 2 weeks leading up to Pesach, the Passover. And what I discovered is, because I didn't have the yeshiva students from New York helping me out, I did it myself, I discovered that we're in bad shape. There's way, way too many homes that do not have a mezuzah on the front door. So basically, COVID has educated me that we have a long, long way to go in our mezuzah campaign. So we just geared up. I just got a delivery 2 weeks ago of another 35 mezuzahs. So we're getting busy for the next 35 homes to get new mezuzahs. And by the way, if you're in California and you don't have a kosher mezuzah on your front door, just holler. I'll get one of these 52 rabbis that are on here, and I'll send them to you to get a mezuzah.
Who sponsors your mezuzahs?
I had different donors. In the beginning, it started with one donor who gave $5,000 to start it off in memory of my paternal grandmother who passed away. But that ran out a long time ago. And we get every once in a while. There's actually a Jew in Southern California who every once in a while sends us a batch of mezuzahs.
What's the craziest thing that happened to you living in Montana?
The craziest thing? I guess it would be the story with the dog, which I don't think is in the film, where a guy wrote an article in the New York Times called "Yes, Mikey, there are rabbis in Montana," and it's because the state of Montana adopted or bought a bomb-sniffing dog that unfortunately for them was trained in Israel and only understood commands in Hebrew. And eventually, through a lot of interaction, they got me to come help the sergeant at the state capitol understand how to give him the commands in Hebrew. And so actually, I have it in front of me. The New York Times had an article, and the last 2 paragraphs of the article read like this, and I'm reading verbatim. So all is well in the Jewish community here because the Hasidic rabbi is helping the Montana cop speak Hebrew to his dog. It is good news all around. The officer keeps the capital safe, and the Hebrew pooch is feeling more at home hearing his native tongue. But the big winner is the rabbi, a recent arrival from Brooklyn who is working hard against tough odds to bring his Lubavitch movement to Montana. He has been scouring the state for anyone who can speak Hebrew and is elated to have found a German shepherd he can talk to. That was in the New York Times in December of 2009. You can Google it, by the way. If you Google Hebrew-speaking dog Montana, you'll have your entertainment for the rest of the night. So that was definitely the most entertaining story. I mean, there's hundreds of stories that every Chabad rabbi experiences. In Montana, there's no different. There was an El Al plane that made an emergency landing in Billings about 4 years ago. And my wife, I was out of town, and Chavi drove there with the 3 kids at the time, and that's what we had. And she loaded up a minivan full of all the food that we had in the freezers and went to feed 316 starving Israelis. I'm joking. We're never starving. There's never a thing. There hasn't been a starving Jew in the last 80 years. But of course, they needed food immediately, and went there to bring them food for their 10-hour stopover in Billings, Montana. But there's a lot of stories, and I could spend all night with you, but it's almost 11 o'clock in Montana. So if you have any other questions, you better get them rolling soon.
All right. Why do some claim that the mezuzah is a ploy to get people to join Chabad, and that the Chumash campaign is a fundraising ploy?
It is. It's all a ploy. Everything we do is a ploy. I moved to Montana because there was nothing better I had in mind other than going to Big Sky country to ploy and con all the millions of Jews of Montana into following Yiddishkeit. Come on, guys. Face reality. A ploy? I could be a much better con artist in New York than in Montana. We moved to Montana because Yiddishkeit means something so much to both me and Chavi that we want to share it with anyone that we can come in contact with, especially those that aren't fortunate enough to be in the big city. So why do they think mezuzah is a ploy? Got to ask them. Next Q&A should be with Rabbi Ed or Rabbi Francine, and you can ask them why they think putting a mezuzah on the door is a ploy. Why they think a Chumash campaign is a fundraising. Anyone that knows me in Chabad knows that Baruch Hashem, I'm a fantastic fundraiser, and I don't need to sell Chumashim or give it out to Jews in Sydney, Montana, to make a few dollars. So if I want to make a few dollars, I'll do one of these kind of events on Facebook Live, and I'll tell everyone to make a donation, and that's good. We'll get a donation. I don't have to order, I forgot how many, I think we ordered 900 chumashim or 950 chumashim and hand delivered them all over. We don't need that. But why people think it's a ploy? I think it's a way for people to have an out. They can say, oh, those guys are bad. I mean, you can ask any Jew in Montana, ask any Jew in Bozeman, Montana, and I make this, Blair and Lisa, when you come to Montana, I want you to go around town, ask any Jew if they've ever heard Rabbi Chaim say a negative word about another Jew in this, another human, forget about Jew, another human being in this state. The answer will be unequivocally no. Rabbi Ed will tell you that, Rabbi Francine will tell you that. We don't have time to talk negatively about other Jews. We got a job to do. They have a job to do. Let them do it fantastically. I got a job to do. And until the last breath I take, Jewish Montana is going to be on my lips.
All right, Gail says you are a lovely New Yorker and a great salesman. From Howard.
In the film, I'm God's salesman. I'm not his policeman, I'm a salesman.
Is this movie going to be in the wide release? And do you know how many people have watched it already?
I love when people ask me questions about the film, the actual production or distribution of it. I know as much as you guys about it. I do believe that the ultimate goal is that they would like to have it on either Netflix or one of those streaming, Hulu, Netflix somewhere. But I'm not sure it's Amazon Prime. I'm not sure how easy it is to get onto those things today, being that everyone's online today. But for those of you that watched it, I hope you had a good time. And if you want to chat later, come to Bozeman. By the way, COVID is over in Montana, so you could come have coffee with me in the coffee shop.
All right, two more. Can we ask you another question, Rabbi Chaim?
Sure. If I fall asleep in the middle, I'll see you in the morning.
You referred to your wife as a rebbitzin in the film. Can you elaborate on why a woman can't be a rabbi? Why she is a rebbitzin? And
No, it's not my role. Call all your senior rabbis in California and have them answer that question. In traditional Judaism, women don't have the role as rabbi. They have the role as a rebbitzin or a community leader. And that's just how it is. Of course, there's nuanced reasons for why, but to have a discussion about that as if that's going to change when it won't is a waste of all of our time. So let's have the conversation based on that reality. And Chavi's very comfortable. She says so in the film herself about her role. If you ask Chavi if she wants to be a rabbi, she will literally burst out laughing, not because she thinks you're a bad person, but simply it's not even the way she was raised, and the way she sees the world is not like that. She has an incredibly successful blog. And if you want to see Chavi's writings, it's called clearasmud.blog, and you could check it out. She speaks for herself. She's a very, very independent woman who speaks quite clearly for herself. I don't need to be her spokeswoman. But no, she has no interest in being a rabbi, nor is that the role of a Chabad Rebbitzin. Thank you, Blair. I see it says Rabbi Chaim welcomed our son Brandon in 2016 to Montana with open arms, and we're very appreciative. And I am honored to not only know Brandon's parents, but Grandpa Bert from Detroit, who I hang out with at APAC every year when I go. And so it's a wonderful family, like many, that I love hanging out with. By the way, we have a great time here in Montana. I'm just telling you that if you just want to come have a good time, forget about religion. We could come together, a nice bottle of whiskey, and we'll have a great time together. I think, Jolie, I think we're going to have a good time together. I see your face on the screen. I think it's going to be fantastic. Any other questions?
Let's see. I think that was great. Rabbi Chaim, was a beautiful film. We enjoyed it. Continue doing amazing things. And we'll call it a night. Thank you, Rabbi Chaim, so much. It was a beautiful film.
God bless you. I hope you survive the next few months of lockdown. And if you escape, I have an Airbnb I could hook you up with. Come hang out with us in Big Sky Country. Have a great evening and love to all. Ciao, ciao.